Thank you, Rob. And Teresa said you might be showing that, so I'll let her know. Anyway, welcome everybody to another opportunity to gather at our open table where we invite everyone to join the effort to end homelessness in Pierce County. Our table is set on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe of Indians. We acknowledge our debt to their stewardship of this region and seek respectful partnerships that honor their culture, history, and current realities. And today, as I'm here with you, I'm reminded of the importance of this weekly opportunity to experience and grow the beloved community. This term, beloved community, was coined by Josiah Royce, the American philosopher who founded the Fellowship of Reconciliation in the early 20th century. Martin Luther King Jr., a member of the fellowship, popularized the term and invested it with deeper meaning, describing this as the birthright of every human being and a recognition that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Congressman John Lewis used the term as a beacon of hope. He said about his work for civil rights, "I discovered that you have to have this sense of faith that what you're moving toward is already done." And what about the coalition? A couple of weeks ago, Bob Volbrecht, I'm glad to see you here today, Bob. He's with the Gig Harbor Coalition and with our coalition as well, reminded me of a presentation in March of 2021 that Maureen Howard had made that he thought would offer a good reminder for us of the power of the work we do together. It would certainly be better to have Maureen here with us today, but with Bob's request and Maureen's willingness to have me select something, she said, pick something about community. So I've selected a few of her thoughts to just get us going this morning. Maureen had been invited to share her perspective during the religious season of Lent. At the time, the pandemic was raging, vaccines were just becoming widely available, and there was heightened action and reaction in response to the continuing reality of systemic racism. Maureen acknowledged the suffering and the violence, but gave examples from her own life and the work of the coalition of the central call and experience of community. She said, quote, "I believe we have to start with how we make community, because I don't know any other way to end the violence. I don't know any other way to stop the racism." She honored those who were no longer with us. She honored those who are no longer with us, whom some of us had met and who had died on the streets of Tacoma. She spoke for those whose sorrow and need breaks our hearts, especially when as outreach workers and neighbors, we have little tangible to offer. She leaned into discomfort in acknowledging the courage of those who take action in response to injustice, even when it makes the rest of us nervous. And she recognized all of us who stay the course no matter what the odds. Most importantly, she emphasized the reality and the call of community. I think she said that it's important that ordinary people remember our communities. It's what most of us are, ordinary people. And we're sometimes called to do extraordinary things. If Maureen were here this morning, she would be challenging us to take on the next most impossible thing, something related to heat probably, but also something related to the situation we saw in a little video. She continues to send out reminders about these opportunities, even as she focuses on her healing. For now, when each day offers multiple reasons to conclude that we humans are toast, I'll side with Maureen. Community, the beloved community, is the best antidote to despair. So welcome. And because it's my job to do this in the morning when we get together, some of you are new and haven't participated, but everybody's probably pretty much a Zoom veteran of some kind. But here's just a couple of things we request. One is that we keep ourselves muted when we're not speaking. Second, that we turn off our video if we're doing other things, even talking on the telephone to someone muted. With your hand gestures, we can sometimes be distracting. And then to use the raise hand function when we want to be recognized. If you're on the phone and it's hard to do that, do try to find some way to get in. We do want to hear from you, but at least start with that as the thing that we would like you to try to do. And in contrast to some other groups you may be in, we encourage use of the chat for conversation during the meeting, to share things that you may not be needing to share with the whole group, to help some new person understand something, or to ask a question as a new person, or to announce things that may take up time in the meeting. If we could let people know through the chat, that would be helpful too. Usually, Rob, you put things that's in the chat. I didn't look to see if it's there, but the Zoom norms, and then in terms of our community norms, the values that we want to emphasize as we converse with each other are listed there as well, so that we're aware of the time. Don't speak more often than 30 people or 40 people. Take up a little bit of time, and so be aware of that and put additional questions and things in the chat if you have more to say whenever that's possible. So I'll leave those there for now and ask anybody who's new who could just let us know that you're here, and if you're with a group that would be useful for us to know your association, to use the raise hand function, and either Rob or I will recognize you to introduce yourself. I should say that we'll have an opportunity to meet a few of us if you're new. We'll have a little breakout session before too long. So April, we'll start with you.
I'm April Sanderson. I recently started at Inside Passages, Pierce County. So I'm new to the call today and I'm happy to join.
Wonderful to have you. Inside Passages is a really important partner, so I'm glad you're here. Katie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just clapping for.
Oh, you're clapping. Well, I see that now. Thank you anyway. That's great.
Kathy, I see your hand up.
Well, good morning, all. I've missed you. I have been substituting in the Tacoma Public School District for the last few months. I know. Talk about that. I've been on the front lines, just a different front line. But I'm glad to be back with you all. And I have missed you. Every Friday morning, it's like a lament. I'm welcoming students, but I'm not able to sign in to our meeting. So I'm here. I'm eager to get the lay of the land today.
Thanks, Kathy, and welcome back. And thanks for all your work of agitation. Very good work.
Yes, good trouble.
Well, Rob, I think that's the new folks today. If anyone else is new today and speaking in this forum isn't kind of the right thing to do right now, or you can't get through, and you want to let us know something about you or how to contact you, you can use the chat for that as well.
Thank you, Rosemary. You do a great job introducing the meeting every week, so really appreciate you. And I know you need to run to another meeting, but I'm glad you could carve out the time to be here now.
Well, thank you all. I'll stay a little bit, but I'll go a little while. So thank you.
Great. All right, so let's jump right into it with our regular weekly segment on what's happening on the streets this week. I know, like many, we will want to talk, and we'll talk again later in the agenda about the upcoming warm weather this weekend and the planning for that. But if you have information that you'd like to share about needs or changes on the street this week, this is a segment that's open to anyone who's doing direct outreach or who has made observations about needs to share. So I open the floor. Anybody have anything to share this week? And Bob, I see you did a clap icon. I don't know if you meant to raise your hand.
It was a hand raise, sorry.
Okay, good. I guessed right.
You're good at that. Yeah, thank you. In line with part of the video we just saw, we found in the last 7 days 3 new elderly, I'll say them, older women living in their cars. 1 came down from Port Orchard area, 2 over from Tacoma, and actually a 4th one who has come back to Gig Harbor area. The 2 from Tacoma indicated that they were looking for a new community to live in. We do not have safe parking yet. We've updated them on what few services we do have locally. And both of them, I think, chose to move on. We haven't seen them for the last couple days, but we know who they are, and we've got them hooked up at least with the food bank and some resources. Paula continues to work diligently on a potential new safe parking operation and location in Gig Harbor, and hopefully that will come to fruition. We're Cushman Trail, a lot of activity. We're getting overnighters on there, but they're transient. So nobody's staying more than 2 or 3 days. Conversely, down on the KP, we're seeing growth in some of the, what used to be 1 and 2 to 3 people encampments are now 4s and 5s in 3 locations. That's a good thing in that there's some safety there for them, but we'll extend ourselves certainly to provide inclement weather services, but also outreach. And I think the best part of all of this is that TRM is now full days in Gig Harbor and KP on alternative Wednesdays. They are meeting the homeless community. They're working with the food banks, been very well received here, and we're having some really good results. So that's the quick update for about the last month.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate that perspective, and it backs up what we have been hearing with folks being scattered by sweeps in Tacoma, that they would move to areas outside the city limits. So appreciate that perspective. Others with information to share about what they're seeing on the streets this week. You want to say anything, Richard?
Just reflecting on what Bob just said is pretty consistent with what we've been seeing over here. The doubling of small encampments. It's surprising, Teresa's talked about this before, but Alzheimer, which is a continuation of G, had originally like 2 tents and 5 or 6 tents, and now it is just a whole slew of tents that are in there, much larger than I realized, and it happens very quickly. The sweep down at Milwaukee began on Tuesday. Sounds like there's a few vehicles still there. The situation is the port talking about spending upwards of $300,000 on barricades, but in the meantime, they're putting unsafe vehicles out on the street, and where the heck they're going to go. When they do a sweep of a tent encampment, tents can scatter, and we'll see the people around and about, but these 40-foot, 30-foot Winnebagos, I don't know where they're going to go. They don't have the means to necessarily relocate. They don't have the means, they may not have the fuel even to get up to Auburn, to the Green River, wherever they might go. I hear some rumor that some are parking along the Puyallup River outside of Tacoma. I haven't checked that out yet. And then again, as you mentioned, it's the 1s and 2s that have been scattered all over town. This what it looks like now. We're seeing them. I live over by 6th and Division, but a short trip to Home Depot over on the west side, we'll see 10, 12, 15 solos out there. And so I'm talking 6th Avenue, Pine, Alder, Center Street, just random people. But they're all over the place, and of course in downtown Tacoma. But that's the consequence of the sweeps, and we're seeing it all over the place. So that's what I'm seeing out there this week.
Appreciate that, Richard. And shifting gears a little bit to talk about the upcoming hot weather, why don't we kind of provide a brief overview of what we understand is going to be available this weekend. And let me put it a little bit in context. So the weather that we're looking at this weekend is not to the same level of severity as what we saw last year with the heat dome. However, the forecast does include a heat advisory for this weekend. And the latest forecasts do look like we could see potentially one day that gets over 90 degrees, which, as I mentioned to somebody yesterday online in another forum, 85 to 90 something might not be that critical if you're able to stay in your house, or you have an air conditioned space, or you can be in the shade somewhere. But if your existence, by the circumstances that you're currently finding yourself in, are living outdoors, and especially if you're living anywhere near the street where the temperatures can rise even more than the official temperature, 90 degrees can be pretty rough. So with that in mind, we will talk a little more about this later in the agenda, but I wondered if folks wanted to share what preparations they are making for handing out water, helping folks this weekend. Paula?
Okay. Okay, yeah, a train just went by. I had to wait just a second there so I didn't drown everybody out. So New Hope received some water. Jan and her husband, those stellar, wonderful saints that help us out bringing and making it possible for us to have water available. We have about a case or a pallet of water, and we have almost a pallet of Propel, but most of that Propel is up at South Hill Baptist. So they are willing to let people come in and pick that up if you're in this area, because Tacoma has the stability side, of course. We do intend on having 2 teams tomorrow go out and deliver water to all the places that we know of, and that will include up in some parking lots up in Bonnie Lake, Sumner, wherever we can find people in their vehicles, just try to get some water out to them. Last year when it hit really hard, we also had things like granola bars and socks and different things like that that we brought. This is going to be bare bones, just going to be water with us this time. So we'll probably go out for a total of about 4 or 5 hours on Saturday, and then Monday, or actually today at New Hope, anybody that comes down to New Hope for the meal or services is going to get 4 bottles of water to take with them. And my question would be, I don't know if there's anybody on here that is going to be at, or that is running the Project Homeless Connect today, but I'm wondering if they've got extra water that they're going to be handing out to folks too. So that would be something that I would say. But if you all want to come and pick up some water, if you're in this area, in the East Pierce County area, we are open till 4 p.m. at New Hope. I'm meeting my team here at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. So if you have to come out tomorrow morning, that's the time to come here, because we'll be loading up and heading out very quickly. And I'll put the address of New Hope in the chat.
EFN delivered an entire truckload of water and beverages to the Homeless Connect site yesterday. So we'll be loading everybody down who comes through today.
That is awesome news. All right, so just the brief overview, I wanted to share that I have pulled together and will be updating throughout the weekend a very bare bones page that's offering information about hot weather resources through the weekend. The link is in the chat, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. I'll show the page on screen, but what I have been told so far, we do have water that has been, the city of Tacoma has opened the stability site, and if you are an outreach worker and you need to pick up water in order to help distribute it to folks who are living outdoors this weekend, they're limiting folks to 4 cases per outreach worker. But the information to go down to the stability site, sign in and pick that up is on the website I linked. The information, I'll update the information that Paula just shared with us for the water that's available in Puyallup. And then there's also water available at St. Vincent de Paul with the contact information on the webpage. In terms of cooling, I got an update today from Caleb at the city regarding cooling opportunities. Brotherhood Rise is going to be open Sunday and Monday with a place to escape the heat if it's needed. That's on the hilltop, and the address is listed on the page. Pierce County Libraries and Tacoma Public Libraries are open on Saturday as options for folks if you need to refer folks to cooling. And then if temperatures hit 90 degrees or above on Monday, the Lighthouse Activity Center will open for seniors and families with children. So that information is on the page, as well as a link to the excessive heat resources document that our partners at the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department pulled together last year. So, so there are some resources for folks. Again, the context is that there's not, this is not quite as critical as the heat that we experienced last year. Delmar, anything you want to add before I get to the other questions, the other hands that are up?
You know, Rob, I just wanted to thank everyone on the call here today, really for being who you are in the community and always keeping our unhoused brothers and sisters in mind. Obviously, this is going to be a tough weekend. As Rob has mentioned several times, it definitely doesn't meet the threshold of last summer or even vice versa, the cold weather that we encountered in December. But in all, it's still a very critical weekend for everyone. And I just wanted to thank you all. I don't know that there's much that I can add besides all that's been said today. Really want to thank Brotherhood Rise for always stepping up and doing great work in the community. And then, of course, the libraries as well. And just all of the advocates here today for just simply caring. Every time I get an opportunity to speak to the community, I always want to mention how important it is simply to care. When you see someone and it seems as though they're homeless and struggling and it's hot outside, give them a bottle of water. Or, you know, if you have some extra gloves and it's cold and you see someone that's struggling, give them those gloves. And I just know that this particular group always carries that message with them. I'm always grateful for you. And even in my capacity as the homeless services supervisor with the county, I love that you challenge me as well and get me to think. And, you know, I did want to, if you can give me 2 seconds or so, Rob, provide an update as to where we are with the county. I know that back in December, I promised that we would step up and do some formal things when it comes to inclement weather. That is all in progress. And in fact, you'll see some changes here really, really soon. In the month of July, I'm sorry. I will say that there are some things that we will be putting out as far as a NOFA, you know, to support these different times and you know, some direct policy around what it is that we want to do. And I know that also we've, you know, we've got some different contracts that are out with providers right now that really address these critical moments. So there are a lot of things that we're doing. Of course, bodies of government work slow. But I do want you all to know that we certainly haven't forgotten you all as advocates, and we haven't forgotten those folks that are unhoused. So just thank you all. If there is anything that you need from me as far as questions being answered, feel free. My phone number is 253-281-3944, and I can put that in the chat.
Thank you, Delmar. So we have a couple of folks with hands up. First, we have the phone number ending in 5552.
Hi, this is Sarah from the rescue mission. I just wanted to update everyone that we will be having cold waters, and we have an industrial fan in our day tent that will be turned on. And then if weather gets too bad, we will be doing letting people in the building early. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that update and for all that you're doing. Bob, your hand's up as well.
Just a quick update. We are challenged to try to get water and supplies to all those spread out people on the KP. But about 3 months ago, the Gig Harbor Rotary included us in a discussion. They had 5 little food pantries constructed and asked us for recommendations on where to put them. There are now 4 of those little food pantries on the KP. Lake Bay Community Church, just outside of Food Backpacks for Kids lot, KP Lutheran, and Waypoint North Church, which are all very, very close to where the homeless residents are living, whether they're vehicle or tents. So this weekend we'll get water to those little food pantry locations. We're a little more strapped, or it's a little more difficult in Gig Harbor because we will not have shelter this weekend in Gig Harbor, according to what I'm told. And just KP Civic Center is open every day anyway, but we'll have a volunteer there if temperatures go over 85. So.
Great. Thank you for that update, Bob. And yeah, I know things are much more spread out in your neck of the woods, so it's more difficult to get out to the people. So appreciate everything you're able to do. Let's see, anyone else who would like to make a comment about the cold or hot weather outreach this weekend? All right, so let's move on with our agenda. I appreciate everyone's input, and Delmar, I appreciate you making the time to be here. All right.
Wait, Rob, quick,
Yeah,
Richard.
go ahead.
Is the hot weather still on the agenda, or was that discussion?
So we're going to have a conversation later in the breakout in actually just a few minutes that will be about hot weather, and I'll show the page with the resources at that point as well. But essentially, if you have something to add on hot weather, now would be a great time to do it.
Okay, let me turn on the video. What I'm recommending is people are bringing water to my porch. Anybody on this call needs to have a couple cases in their car. If you see people, especially the singles out there, be prepared to distribute. We're going to touch however many people we touch, but there are hundreds of people that are singles that have been displaced by the sweeps. Encampments are easy. It's getting it to the solos, the ones and twos that are out there. And that's what collectively we can make a difference on, because organizationally it's almost impossible to reach all these people. And so these are the flag wave, the sign wavers, the panhandlers, the people pushing carts down the street. Those are the people organizationally it's very, very difficult to reach. And so I'm encouraging people to stock up on water. Better yet is freeze some of them so that they're in the form of ice when you hand them out. Those are always welcome. And just, and I'll bring this up in the chat, but tell me if I'm wrong, Rob, but fundamentally we have a hot weather threshold at the city that is different than the hot weather threshold at the county. They've had a year to prepare for this, and we have two different triggers for hot weather. And to my eye, that's just unacceptable. So I'll be bringing that up in chat. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and you're correct right now. So the Safe Sites for All committee has been encouraging the city of Tacoma and the county to use a threshold of 85 degrees, or when we have advisories issued by the National Weather Service, as being a point at which some sort of response takes place. And the city of Tacoma has more or less adopted that. I haven't heard them officially say 85 degrees is the threshold for them, but they clearly have opened up the access to water resources for use within the Tacoma city limits. So we do still have a situation where different levels of the government onion are setting the thresholds at different levels, and it'd be really helpful to have a more regional standard, so that even when you look at weather forecasts, the temperatures are going to be different in Tacoma than they are in Puyallup, than they are in Bonnie Lake. And if we all just had a similar threshold, it would be a lot easier to know for everyone to know how we're going to respond.
Yeah.
And at what point cooling centers open, and at what point, all those things. So we've still got work to do.
So both of the governments have been meeting. Unfortunately, they have not been meeting with one another, nor have they been advocates in those meetings. And so those are a couple of things that would be nice to see changed as they go forward. A year ago, the county council sent a letter to its staff and to the mayor asking them to do exactly this kind of coordination. And this does not seem to have transpired yet. So anyway, I'll bring that up in chat or the breakout. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And I know folks are, like you said, meeting. It's just, it hasn't gotten there yet. And I think that's part of what Delmar was referring to earlier. But yeah, I wish we could be more nimble, and we can do better, definitely, as a community, as a region. Okay, so I think we've covered this topic for now. Like I said, in a few moments, I'll again show you the website, and then we'll have a breakout conversation about heat resources. But the next thing on our agenda, first of all, we did have a community spotlight today. I don't see currently Jarrell Morris from Pierce County AIDS Foundation with us today. Jarrell, are you here with a phone or something and I'm not seeing you in the listing? I'll pause for a moment. Okay, so I'm not seeing you here, so we'll reach back out to Jarrell, see if we can confirm a time for that conversation. What I wanted to shift into is something that's related to the On the Streets segment, just to raise awareness with the coalition, is an issue around a rights of way proposal that's come out of the governor's office. And Richard and I and a number of advocates from across the state have been involved in meetings with the Washington State Department of Commerce that is administering funds from a budget proviso that was included in the budget this year at the state level to set up a program to prioritize essentially encampment cleanups in the rights of way on state roadways. So this would be an issue that is related to the work that Colin DeForest does in his contract with WashDOT down in Fife, and encampment clearings and sweeps that take place in that area, but also any rights of way that that the state has control over across the entire state. And the funds, there's actually a proposal out now to the counties and to local governments to, on a very quick timeline, make proposals to the Department of Commerce about means that they could use and prioritize creating shelter space and access to permanent housing for those who are living in the rights of way currently. And what this is going to mean, at least as it's proposed right now, is that here in Pierce County, which as I understand it, Pierce County officials have not been very involved in the conversation outside of, I believe Colin mentioned that he has been involved in the conversations around this rights of way issue. But what it can mean in Pierce County is that proposals potentially could set aside shelter space within the county specifically for moving people out of the rights of way, and could essentially lock other folks out of shelter space if they're not living in the rights of way. So essentially prioritize sweeping people out of the rights of way into set aside shelter opportunities, and potentially preclude others who are, say, in a sweep area that the city of Tacoma is going after from being able to use those shelter spaces. So that's one challenge with what's been proposed at the state level. There's also nothing in the proposal from the governor's office at this time that would preclude criminalizing those who are living within the rights of way, which is a major issue and one that we've been opposed to. And then the only other update I would offer is that it's my understanding that the city of Tacoma officials are meeting with the Department of Commerce related to this budget proviso today. So there is an interest on the part of at least the city, I don't know about the county, in putting a proposal together to address this issue along the state roadway rights of way. So I just wanted to raise the issue so that folks were aware of it. In my work with the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, we have submitted comments to Commerce, and some of those comments were included in the proposal that's out now for funding. But we still have concerns, and I wanted to raise those concerns here and see if folks had any particular questions. I don't know that I'll have all the answers, but I'm certainly willing to hear the questions. So I open the floor if folks want to ask. And Richard, anything you would add in terms of from your understanding of where things stand?
No, I think that's accurate. You should start seeing, there have been press reports of this money in the last few days. So I think a $5 million contract with Thurston County, but it was initially the magnitude of the money. There's 5 counties that they're preparing to spend up $144 million to remove people from Department of Transportation structures. The allocation for Pierce County is $30 million for 318 people. And so that's of interest. And then kind of on a larger thing that, again, maybe a different coalition conversation, we get pretty good notices with what's going on with the sweeps in the city of Tacoma. We hear nothing about the Department of Transportation sweeps, nor really Pierce County sweeps. I get nothing on those 2 areas. And to really have an understanding of what's going on out there in the encampments and people that are being displaced, we need to figure out some method of getting better information from both of those 2 systems. And I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Richard. I did attend the outreach meeting that Pierce County hosts earlier this week, and I brought up asked Delmar, who's still with us, so thank you, Delmar. Asked Delmar about getting notification on Pierce County sweeps. I can reach out to Colin to see if we can get further heads up from the work he's doing with WashDOT, so that we hear about sweeps happening related to WashDOT properties. This is an issue not just in Pierce County, but clearly statewide. The money that's in this budget proviso is actually only for 4 counties. So it's only for Snohomish, King, Pierce, and Spokane counties. And because Spokane County is included, this also potentially could impact the camp that Richard talked about a couple weeks ago at the coalition meeting, where there were 400 plus people living in a camp in Spokane that's on WashDOT property. So so it's an issue that has a lot of impact here in the I-5 corridor and then over in Spokane. Any other?
Just want to, I'm struggling with it. I mean, it's a lot of money, and all else being equal, it is positive money going to working on homelessness issues. On the other hand, and some of the advocates were raising this, a sweep is a sweep is a sweep, that if they're sweeping DOT structures today, are they going to be doing sidewalks and parks tomorrow? So you know, it's a paradox of where one falls on it. I don't have clear guidance on it, and I'm just because of the magnitude of money. I think it's important to continue to pay attention to how it's being spent, and then what's being done in real terms on the ground.
Garrett.
Well, I would say it's a mischaracterization to say the county isn't interested in this funding. So we definitely are interested in this funding. This is really good funding. Yeah, there's some limits to it, but almost all of our funders put limits on how we spend our money. And if you're talking about 362 beds or 318 beds of well-funded shelter, you know, that's nothing to shake a fist at. And we have a lot of people living on DOT land in Pierce County. And so I don't know what to say, like Richard, where you say like, well, concerned about building shelter and moving people from public spaces into that shelter. I don't, that's hard for me to kind of process a little bit, but I think the opportunity to build that shelter and build shelter that's attractive enough that people will be willing to live there, you know, as an opportunity we're not going to sort of pass up.
One thing I would add, Garrett, it's my understanding these funds need to be, and the shelter needs to be available essentially next month. So are these funds really, didn't seem to me that they were really going to be appropriate for creating much new shelter or new housing, although I suppose they could be used for like purchasing a hotel and transferring the use of that hotel into
so all I have is the current draft of the proposed spending plan, and and that does have a crazy July 2022 but it's only 82 of the beds, right? So if you're talking 318 beds, so they want 82 in phase 1, that's by July. They want another 82 in phase 2, that would be by September. Again, those are aggressive timelines. And the third 153 by January of 2023, right? So that's aggressive, but not undoable. And so like how that plays out, how the money actually becomes available from the state, I don't know. Like I've not been part of that. I have only seen the internal, distribution of that initial plan. And so, and to your point, Rob, like, I don't know how the money is going to Thurston already. Like, are we sure that's this funding stream? Because I'm not even sure they've got done arguing over, the restrictions on the funding. And the budget proviso is very different than the draft plan that's been circulating out of Commerce, right? Draft plan is much more shelter focused, and that draft proviso, is much more permanent housing focused. And I don't know how that, and how it's not the aggressive, like I don't get a lot of the parts to it, but if there's funding available, I mean, I think that we do it, right?
Yeah.
And if they're going to offer it, and how strict will they be about were you on public property or not? Like, well, of course we care about the spirit behind the funding, but shelter beds are shelter beds.
Yeah. Yep. And those differences between the proviso and what actually is in the proposal are part of what folks who I work with have been pressing on. I appreciate this conversation. I really wanted to just raise it so that folks on the coalition were aware of the budget of this proposal, and then also aware of the timing, because as we know, at least in terms of the city of Tacoma, there's been a real acceleration in sweeps, and there's the possibility of even more folks being displaced from where they're currently at, and more scattering of people that will impact our whole county. So now you know what I know. As comforting or not that all is. So let me shift.
Could I take a quick second just to respond to Jenny's question? So her question was, does the comp plan address sort of this lack of, I guess you're perceiving a lack of intergovernment communication? I would say this is not our worst intergovernment communication. So as far as I know, there is not funding on the table from the state, right? So we you know, they put a proposal out, people have responded with input, and at some point they'll decide how the funding's going to go, right? That's the state, a funder, and then we'll be applying for that funding with whatever constraints it has in the community, and then deploying it according to the comprehensive plan to end homelessness, with the understanding that there's constraints on all of our funding about how it gets used. So I guess that would be it. But yeah, I mean, the goal is to have a more centralized decision-making body on funding. So the hope would be that that money comes in, we figure out how it belongs in our plan, what our next priorities are that we have laid out, and we deploy it, again, within the constraints of the funding.
Thanks, Garrett. Just to be clear, I wasn't, and as part of the government agency folks here, you know, I'm sensitive to this too, but I think my comment wasn't responding to this conversation about this funding thing, but more to some comments made about the extreme weather response and how the city and county are not talking to each other or not meeting together, or that statement, as well as sweeps and stuff like that. And so I was just thinking about the unified structure that the comp plan calls for, and how, you know, that's not going to address someone's complaints or concerns at this moment, but that I'm hopeful that that unified approach will be helping us in the future to all come together to coordinate better.
Yeah, and Rob's staring at me for taking more time than we should have, but
and then I'm making the problem worse. So I will see myself out now.
No, I'm not staring at you, Garrett. I'm not even watching you at all. All right, so I appreciate the conversation, and again, all I really wanted to do was to let folks know on this coalition about the potential impacts of this proposal and these actions here in Pierce County. So our next item on the agenda is a review of last week's breakout conversations. And Timothy, would you like to take the floor?
I certainly would. So last week we talked about how our community can make coordinated entry work better. And there was a lot of feedback on that, and I'll do my best to quickly walk us through it. I started with a lead quote that was basically just a reminder that coordinated entry is always evolving, and what somebody thinks might be the status of coordinated entry might not be quite as bad as you think it is. To try to continue to have belief in the system and know that it's always improving, and give the thing a chance. Moving from there, overwhelm is the dysfunctional norm, and lots of people spoke to that. 211 line being overwhelmed, people having a hard time getting through, clients routinely reporting that nobody's calling them back, service providers overwhelmed by the gap between the need and the available resources, most individuals not getting prioritized, others knowing kind of what to say to get bumped up and how to, I don't know, kind of work the system. Case managers having much too high of a caseload, not being able to deliver the services to their clients that they would like to. A recognition that the lack of housing fundamentally is the problem here. That's the bottleneck that we're dealing with. And finally, that there's more than 2,000 households on the coordinated entry list, and that means that the ones that are breaking through to get the help are often the ones who are being the squeaky wheels. And, you know, the other side of that, which is, you know, those who don't have the wherewithal to be the squeaky wheel are the ones that get left behind, and the sort of equity issues behind that. Ideas for improving coordinated entry, quite a bit there. timeliness came up, calling people back regularly to keep them informed, better contact with folks is something that came up quite a bit. Really, really great concrete suggestion of adding a callback feature so that people don't have to stay on hold forever. The importance of building and keeping trust, under promising, over delivering. Try not to undermine faith in the system by making promises that we can't keep. Leading with programs that are working really well, and sort of focusing on what works. There's suggestion that there needs to be more training in cultural competency. There were more suggestions about training, observation that more case managers having access to coordinated entry might be a good thing, that there needs to be more funding to help case managers get the training that they need, and a recognition that prevention is cheaper than treatment, that prevention is that getting to people before they become homeless is always a good thing, and that it's unfortunate that you have to be in crisis and homeless to be able to access this system. There were some solid suggestions about good advice for clients. The suggestion that people recommending that they CC their emails to multiple points of contact, keep it in front of multiple eyes, getting into the system as early as possible and being prepared with the right materials so that there's no delay around that. And then a observation that a lot of applicants are just afraid to tell the truth about their situation, and that's not helpful, and that people need to be encouraged that telling the truth is the best way to get help. And finally, kind of good news, bad news thing in recent development, that the Community Homeless Resolution Partnership recently got funding to expand their services, and Tacoma Pro Bono is telling us that the eviction tsunami that they've been warning about is happening. So that's the roundup.
Thank you, Timothy. There was a lot in that roundup. So appreciate everyone's sharing.
I'll drop it in the chat too, so if people want to download the document, it's easy.
Fantastic. And again, as a reminder for folks, if you want to see those documents before the following Friday meeting, Garrett's been staying on top of posting the link to the document on the pchomeless.org site. So thank you for that, Garrett. And again, thank you for your work doing this, Timothy.
Sure.
So to set up our breakout conversation for today, we've talked a lot about the hot weather that's coming, and I thought that might make sense to take a real quick look at the web page that I've put together with hot weather resources. So let me bring that up on screen here. All right, so I'm sharing my screen just for a brief moment. This page it's going to be here for the hot weather spell and then disappear afterward. But what I'm doing is, as information is emailed to me or I gather information from other resources, I'm updating. There's a link at the top of the page asking if you're doing outreach. I can give you access to a spreadsheet where we're trying to track where folks are doing outreach and different sites across the county. We're limiting access to that page just because of the sensitivity of not wanting to identify where publicly where the different sites are. But we know it's important that we try to make sure that the access to water is being spread across the county and we're not just all hitting the same sites. I am, as the forecast is updated, updating the forecast section of the page. And then there's information about where folks can go to get water. The thing I would call attention to here is that in most cases, you should call ahead before going to get water, just to confirm that there is water available, and also to let the provider who's doing this work know that you're coming. I also would note that there is access to pick up water at the stability site, but it's just for water that's going to be distributed within the Tacoma City limits. The water at New Hope Resource Center that Paula mentioned earlier, again, call ahead, but the understanding there is that water is going to essentially be available until 4 o'clock today. And Paula, correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't know if you're still on the call. And then St. Vincent de Paul, I've seen Dion post in the chat confirming this phone number to call and the hours that they're open for Friday and Saturday. I already did the overview of the cooling center information and then the link to the excessive heat resources document. What I wanted to do, and I'll stop sharing now. What I wanted to do is, yeah, Gerald, if you can send me information about how folks can get water at Brotherhood Rise, I will add that to the document. And I wanted to ask in this short breakout session, what other information do we want to share on this webpage? I'd like to come out of this morning with some additions that can be made to the document that will be updated over the weekend. So let's see, Jan's asking a question in the chat about whether the water from Rise can be used in any geographic area across the county. I don't know if you want to address that, Gerald, or just do it in the chat. But what I wanted to do was to send us to breakouts and see what other ideas folks have. We can just spend 10 minutes on this morning.
Sorry, Rob, I totally missed what you just asked me.
Yeah, so the question from Jan is whether the water that you have at Brotherhood Rise can go out to anywhere in the county, or if it's restricted to within the Tacoma City limits.
Great question. Great question. I will get that information back to you. Let me
awesome.
Reach out. Okay.
That sounds great.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to send us off into breakout rooms. Please have somebody take notes and share the information in the chat. And we'll just do this for 10 minutes this morning. Again, this is really about what additional information would be good to share on the hot weather page. And what other resources do we need for the next hot weather spell? So away we go, and we'll spend 10 minutes. We'll be back here at 10:11. Well, welcome back, everyone. Again, our hope in these conversations is that we get to know each other a little bit more, have a chance to network, but also share information about the topic. And hopefully somebody took notes in your room and wants to drop them into the chat. So that Timothy can do his magic later today. So thank you, and hopefully that was fruitful. So our next item on our agenda is our government updates. I do not, let's see, Jeff Rogers is not here from the county. And Caleb from the city of Tacoma is not here. I know Valerie dropped an update into the chat earlier before she had to depart at 10. And so that leaves us with Jenny. Jenny, do you have anything to share from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department?
Nope. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Don't do that to me, Jenny.
Just bringing a little levity today. Hi everybody. Happy to be here as always, to be included in this conversation and get to know you all. Let's see, what can I share? I know I just feel like the heat is so important and is on everyone's mind. I appreciate the time that was dedicated to that this morning. We still have COVID, obviously, around. Data are all over the place. I'm starting to feel uncomfortable sharing weekly, like the cases are this, the hospitalizations are this. It just looks like it's messy. I can tell you that the good news is we are still well below where we were in January. We continue to be there. You know, I mean, the peak is way crazier than we are now. So I think that that's good news, but I think we're just going to see these little ups and downs going on, especially with the unreliability of case data because of home tests not being reported, things like that. The CDC in Washington, DOH, Department of Health, still recommend masking in congregate settings. I was talking with Sally in our group, and she and I were both agreeing that it just kind of feels like all bets are off and there are no rules. And I think people need to do what they need to do to protect themselves, and to be cautious. If you're in a position to encourage mask wearing, vaccinations, you know, we need to continue to do all that stuff. I know we're all tired. We've got 2 new contracts in place with vaccine providers. And I'm going to start working with the congregate settings, especially, our medium and large congregate settings, to do more vaccine clinics, as well as, entertaining the idea again about encampment, bringing vaccines to encampment areas in conjunction with outreach teams if there is desire there. So I'm working on that. The most important thing I have to share, and I'm not looking forward to sharing this, but it is about isolation and quarantine, some updates to that. I will send this information in detail out in email, as I've been doing every Friday afternoon. So if you don't catch the details here, please don't worry about that. But as of last Friday, the 17th, we no longer have isolation and quarantine phone line and placement coverage on Saturdays. This decision was made because isolation quarantine is incredibly costly, and there was very rare usage on weekends. That's the message. And so we're having to make some tough decisions. I know I'm not thrilled about it. Others are not thrilled about it, but current hours of operation are Sunday to Friday, 8 to 5. The process remains the same. I will share the phone number in the chat. The line is staffed during the stated hours. If no one answers, leave a message. The expectation is that calls will be returned within 1 business day. If you need help on a Saturday, please still call. We need those data points to know that this need is there, in order to make decisions moving forward. So, like I said, I don't like to deliver news like that, but that is the situation that we are in right now. I want folks to send me feedback, comments, questions, complaints. I do take those seriously, and I bring them back to my leadership. And I do care deeply about the needs out there, and continue to advocate for us to find a more sustainable, cost-effective strategy for this. That's what I have to say. I shared, again, I will share this in email, and if you have questions, please let me know. Stay safe.
Great. Thank you, Jenny, and appreciate you being here and the levity that you offer as part of your updates. Thank you very much. Any questions for Jenny before we move on? All right. So next on our agenda is I was going to offer a brief advocacy update. And there actually is some information to share this week. So from the Tacoma City Council, the City Council is going to hear a homelessness update during the June 28th study session. That's a meeting that happens at noon. The information, you can follow the meeting on Zoom. I believe they're doing hybrid now, so you can actually go attend the meeting as well. However, this is not a meeting where there is an opportunity for public comment. That noon study session also includes the discussion, a presentation about therapeutic courts. So for those who have the time to listen in, this might be a good opportunity. There's nothing related to, directly related to homelessness on the Tuesday night regular meeting agenda for the Tacoma City Council. So that's that. When it comes to the Pierce County Council, we won't see their agenda for next week until later today. So nothing new to update there. Courtney, you have a question?
I have an addition. On
Okay.
Tuesday, there is going to be a public comment for City Council, and there will be quite a crowd there advocating for an alternate emergency crisis response team, an unarmed crisis response team, which, while not addressing homelessness, will greatly impact the homeless and the broader housed community as well. So I encourage people to show up and speak up for that.
Great, that is great information to share. And Courtney, is that going to mostly be in person or also via Zoom?
I believe it's a hybrid meeting, so come as you can.
Great, thank you for that context. That's good to know what our community is reaching out to push the council to do. Any other questions or comments for the advocacy content? All right, not seeing any. Let me shift back to my agenda document. And I don't really have much to share in terms of the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan and homelessness update today. The advisory board for the comp plan will meet again during the first Friday of July. I apologize, last week I was out, so I haven't, if there have been new developments related to the comp plan, I didn't hear them. And of course, Garrett actually stepped away, so he can't add anything in this arena right now. He is headed off to Project Homeless Connect. So next in our agenda is an update regarding the work of the Safe Sites for All Committee. Jan?
Well, we've been busy. Okay, of the 3 areas that we cover, the first one being the coalition, and what is the coalition's response to government prior to sweeps or removals, knowing what we know, that people have a right to exist. So I would like to thank our own Pierce County Helen Mirren, otherwise known as Teresa Power-Drudas, for doing that public statement on King 5, that basically, she said that in the interview, she mentioned the Coalition to End Homelessness. It was edited out. So at least that kind of exposure, that kind of a media use to get the full story out about souls on the streets who belong somewhere, and the impact that has on existing neighborhoods that then take in what seems to be a burden from other neighborhoods. So that was a great example of what we can do individually. And then Rob, did you come up with a newly edited, more powerfully languaged letter to government, you and Ed?
So that that is work that is still in process. That will be done very soon.
Okay.
It got slowed down because I was out last week.
And then once that letter is drafted, we will send it out to the coalition. It will represent the coalition. And always we encourage folks to individually petition local government or whatever jurisdiction is doing the removals. So that's on the response to the sweeps and the effect on neighbors who are losing the folks who are there and those neighbors who are gaining extra folks in their front yards. Safe Parking Network is just a true success story of this coalition. I had the pleasure of going to our first and largest site, which is outside of Puyallup, to deliver water and Propel energy or electrolyte drink. Met a woman there who this is one person's story. So 6 months ago, she got sick, ended up with septicemia, ended up in the hospital, ended up nearly dying, ended up losing her job, ended up in her car, ended up on the streets. Somebody got the word to her about Safe Parking Network. She got to Puyallup, and she says that that is a lifesaver. She feels safe. She went from being gainfully employed and living in a home to losing everything, and is now taken in by Safe Parking Network. And the only thing she asked of me was a hug. So it was, the woman is in her, I would say she's white, in her mid-40s, articulate, and is grateful for absolutely anything that can be done on her behalf. And the level of respect that is shown is noted by and appreciated by the folks who are able to access the program. So it is a real success story. Now, the last issue that we talked about is our newest issue, which is the emergency distribution network for inclement weather events. Because last summer was so awful and we responded to such a high level of commitment amongst ourselves, the partners that stepped up last summer agreed to step up again. So hats off to Dion Jacobson. Dion, are you still here? Hats off to Dion Jacobson and the St. Vincent de Paul. They are, and her phone number is on Rob's sheet, and she put her phone number in there. They are available today and tomorrow. Okay, Dion, stick your phone number in there, and also the, or I don't know if you want your address in there, but that's where people would go. So Dion's St. Vincent de Paul would help mainly those on the west side. Anybody can go. Dion and St. Vincent de Paul has not put geographic restrictions. So anybody can go there, but we did not have a site for the west side. So Lakewood folks, I don't know if Jan is still here from LASA, but any LASA or west side folks can go. And then we've got, of course, Paula Anderson, and has stepped up. And when we lost the site that we originally used last year, we lost it due to Mother Nature reaching her gnarly, ugly hand and ripping our life support away from us. But New Hope stepped up, and South Hill Baptist stepped up for water and Propel. So Propel electrolytes. I'm a public health nurse. With heat, we lose electrolytes, right? So water is one thing, but electrolyte loss is another thing. We come down with muscle disorders, kidney issues. So if you want any of that, touch bases with Paula, and she will let you know the hours of availability for the Propel and for the water. And then, of course, the city. I got to thank Allison with the city of Tacoma and Caleb. When Rob first said on Monday's Zoom meeting that the weather was going to be bad, you know, I mean, all that emotion of last year and how tough it was like, okay, it's going to be bad. We know it's going to be bad. Do I have to make every single phone call to absolutely everybody to get a site for water? Well, we had found out that the city of Tacoma had already started stocking pallets of water at the stability site for folks in the stability site. The only sticking block, and I apologize forever and ever to Richard Dorsett, the only sticking point was the city of Tacoma never came up with a policy upon which outreach workers, all of us, both paid agency outreach workers and those of us who are volunteers can access the stability site to get water. Because of Richard's experience of not being able to access water, the city of Tacoma stepped up with a policy saying 85 degrees, 48 hours notice. So if the National Weather Service says it's going to be 85 degrees on Wednesday, back up 2 days to 9 a.m. on Monday for access to water. And this, I do believe, is the policy going forward, is the policy in place right now. So stability site, if you go to stability site for in-city encampments, you sign in there. You're going to give your name, your agency. If you're working as a volunteer with us, with the coalition, you just sign coalition, and your contact. That's all we ask is your name, your agency affiliation, and your contact cell number. Those of us who love data, we would love to know where you're serving, which encampments you're serving. But I think that this particular way of retrieving information would be too cumbersome. And so we'll work on that. So kudos to the committee, kudos to all of our partners. Brotherhood Rise is stepping up yet again. I just cannot tell you, and the Tacoma Rescue Mission and Nativity House have all been responsive. So we show up at these meetings because we're supposed to. If we want to be good people, we show up because we're supposed to. We stay because we work together well. So on behalf of all of you who show up at these meetings, thank you. Keep coming back. Together we'll, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're not going to be quiet. So with that, I will wish everybody a safe weekend.
We're not going to be quiet. That's the saying of the day. Thank you, Jan. So I have time set aside for coalition committee updates. This is usually a segment where Rosemary fills in. She's not here because she's attending a national conference. So let's shift over to any announcements that folks want to share. And maybe this would be an appropriate time, Jenny, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate you. Sorry, I'm being bombarded. He is very demanding of attention. So I made the announcement last week that I'm leaving Inside Passages. My final day is this coming Tuesday. So for anyone who would like to get in touch before then, feel free. I just wanted to say, and y'all are going to make me weepy, so I apologize for the emotions. It's a very emotional decision for me as I'm leaving social services. Each and every one of you are very, very special to me. The relationships that I have built while working with each and every one of you in this community are so special and so important to me, and I value each and every one of you. The work that you are doing is so incredibly important. I am so happy to have been part of this amazing group over the last almost 3 years. I cannot even begin to express my gratitude and for taking me in as part of this group, for educating me on how this work is done and how we can do things better, and for allowing me to give back as well. And work with each and every one of you. I just cannot express the gratitude and the gratefulness and the humbleness that I have in being able to work with y'all. I will miss you all very, very much. I will try to pop in every once in a while and show my face and say hello. I am just so thankful for all of you, and keep doing great things, making good trouble. And doing the work.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
And appreciate the impact you've had, and we know you're going to continue to have a positive impact on our community going forward too. Anytime you can stop by, please do.
I will definitely make it a priority.
Awesome. So anyone else with items that they would like to share with the larger group? I can't believe it. Are we a silent group this afternoon or this morning? Yeah, I understand. So, Jan, go ahead.
Delmar left before I could ask him this question, and so I texted him the question, and he texted back. Human Services, and Garrett left also. Pierce County Human Services says that they will reimburse already existing contracted service providers for extra supplies to cover these weather emergencies. I have asked, what is the trigger by which agencies know that their expenses will be reimbursed? Apparently, this is part of the bigger problem that since there is no countywide threshold recognized for a response, there is no policy in place by which existing contracted service providers know they can be reimbursed. He says that every individual service provider has to contract their contract person within the human services and negotiate this prior to incurring the expense. Well, that doesn't work really well when you're going on faith to buy pallets of water to save people on the streets. So there's the ripple effect of not having a unified, agreed upon threshold is confounding. If I were the manager of a contracted service provider, I would say to heck with it and not even do it, right? I mean, isn't it easier to just not do it as opposed to doing the right thing and try to squabble about getting it paid later? So Delmar maybe knew I was going to have to ask that question publicly, but I don't know. I'll be quiet and let Sally take over here.
Yeah, Sally, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, one note from the county. There's a county council. County council has study sessions every Monday at 11 o'clock. And at this particular study session on Monday, they're going to be talking about ARPA funding. And while that may not seem connected, it is actually, because when the council did the budget, they set aside $5 million for homelessness of ARPA funds without specifying further what it would be used for. That $5 million is now in a state of confusion because the executive finance people thought they could pull it back and allocate it to something else. But meanwhile, the Human Services Division had decided that they could allocate it for certain activities related to homelessness. And so there's confusion between the council and the executive branch about that $5 million. And it's possible that that will be covered in that ARPA update on Monday. We need to be watching that like a hawk, because if there's $5 million floating around that could be invested in effective responses to homelessness, we need to make sure that happens. So I'll be watching that study session and I can get an update to y'all, but that's the level at which we have to be paying attention when budget decisions are being made, because people make different assumptions about what happened and now there's confusion about where that money actually is. So I just wanted to mention that because that's going to be an ongoing conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. And Jan, I see your hand up. Did you have something more to add?
I have a question for Sally. Okay, if I don't know if ARPA money has to be spent on COVID related issues, but if there's a part for public comment, I can tell you that this weekend's emergency response by the coalition was thwarted by COVID. So I got a very specific example of how COVID impacted our emergency distribution network, emergency weather response for those living unsheltered. So I don't know if ARPA has to be traced back to COVID. A lot of the money that came through to us had to be tied into COVID specific kinds of activities, prevention.
I think that was, Jan, I think the CARES Act was more tightly tied to specific COVID impacts. I think the ARPA money has some more flexibility, but the point that I think is important to make is that we continue to have these unexpected things happen that require funding in order to be able to respond. That $5 million, some of that could go for this kind of emergency weather response. And the study session does not take public comment, but every county council meeting at the end has an opportunity for people to testify on anything that's within the jurisdiction of the county. And so at the county council meeting on Tuesday at 3 o'clock, at the end of the meeting, there's always public testimony and people can come and testify at that. And that would be one opportunity to do that.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that back and forth. So I am pasting some information from Caleb into the chat. I think just that one item at this time. Anyone else with other items of interest to share with the larger group? All right,
Ask
so
a
let's
quick question, Rob.
Yeah, go ahead.
If anybody is familiar now, I know Valerie said that she was leaving at 10. I've never sent out an email to the listserv and I didn't get a response. So I'm just wondering if we have anybody who we can contact rather than that like info email. I just don't want to throw that out into the ether. I would like to know if there's anybody other than Valerie that I can contact directly on behalf of she's a single mom, she's a tenant, and she got rental assistance in the past, but there was just a gap there in communication. There was a miscommunication and a staffing change, not blaming anyone at all, but just adding context. So if there's anyone, if you know anyone that I can contact, drop that in the chat for me. I would greatly appreciate that because I'm trying to follow up on that situation today.
One quick
and
question.
yes, I still have been fielding questions. Wonder Woman with all my,
One question for you, Kathy. Have you reached out directly to Valerie? Because really, I do think she'd probably be the most likely responsive.
If I'm honest, I've been so focused on meeting the needs of these lovely elementary students that I forgot her name.
Okay.
So I was just reminded when I signed in today, but I can reach out to her directly.
Yeah,
I
I think that's
misunderstood.
probably
I
gonna be
thought
your
she
best
said she
avenue.
was like leaving. Okay, I'll reach out to her.
Perfect. All right. So
There's only so much RAM up here,
Yeah, tell me about it. I have the same issue. So let's see. Let's move on. Any reflections on today's meeting? I always like to offer an opportunity for folks to share what worked well today, what didn't work well, what can I do better to facilitate next week's meeting, and what kinds of things are missing. So please drop anything in the chat if you have any thoughts, or you can send them to me at my coalition email address as well. I wanted to make sure we carved out space here before we wrap up today's meeting for anyone to share any success stories that they would like to share. So I open the floor. Yeah, Jan, go ahead. You already shared a powerful one. So.
I did. Let's see if I can top that. Medical Reserve Corps goes out every Wednesday as a street outreach public health messenger. This time we went to 35th and Pacific. And I think Jeffrey Boyce goes there quite a bit and he's on vacation. So we were there for our third time. We noticed a new rig. We noticed a new white van with an older male who disclosed that he was a veteran with suffering from Agent Orange exposure. That would be my generation, right? We also noticed a young female who looked like she is very likely going to be targeted for trafficking. so these were new folks to this site. I called Comprehensive Life Path Team, and they weren't able to make it that day, but they were able to go the very next morning. So about 20 hours later, they were able to go, and they looked actively for both of those folks, neither one of whom were still there. But I was so pleased to know that I could call a PATH team, or and I forgot what PATH is an acronym for, if it's on that acronym list. And the response was, I mean, actually I got somebody call me back on the phone, and I could talk to that person on the phone, and then that person called me back the next day. And while we might have lost those two particular people, there will be cases that they can intercede and respond to, and with the help of everybody here in this room, have a softer bed for folks that night. So the kudos is for CLR, Comprehensive Life Resources, their PATH team. And it's just nice to have a phone number to call when you're in the middle of muck and mud and tents.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective, Jan. So I would like to wrap up today's meeting a little bit early, but I want to give a quick heads up. Next week's meeting is on July 1st. It is the weekend right before right before a long weekend. So I would anticipate we will have a little bit shorter coalition meeting next Friday. We typically, when I'm trying to plan these meetings, I do give any presenters a heads up that there may be lower attendance at a meeting like this ahead of a holiday weekend. So that's just the heads up to you all that we will probably have a shorter meeting for next week. But I do hope that you can still join us. And I do wish you all a happy and safe weekend. I hope you can stay cool. If you have the ability to go out and hand out some cold water to folks, I know you're going to do it. I'm confident that we'll be doing that work this weekend. So with that, I say have a great weekend to everyone. And if you do have an interest in helping plan next week's meetings and other meetings heading out into July, we'll be doing that here after a short 5-minute break. Thanks, everybody.